Let's start with the growth of the industry. You've obviously seen this over a long time. Maybe give me a summary of the evolution of the industry.
Very briefly, it started in '93 with something called the Venture Capital Fund Regulation Act. Nothing much really happened. All the money came from overseas. Then sometime in 2012, a new framework came called the Alternate Investment Fund Framework, a new regulation. When we started at IVCA actively working on this, the year was 2013, 2014. There was something like, I don't even remember now, 4,000 or 11,000 crores pooled in 2014 into the AIF 1 and 2. 1 represents the VC roughly and 2 represents private equity. Today it is 1.8 lakh crores. You can put that in any language you want, 1.8 trillion rupees, or whatever you want to say. It's grown that level 15, 20 times since that time. 400-500 fund managers have come. Many of the larger funds, the key GPs have stepped out from places like Warburg Pincus, from places like Sequoia, the best of the best firms, and have started their own firms, places like General Atlantic. Many of the individual managers from ICICI Venture, they have started their own, like Renuka. And then people like me who come from traditional family businesses. I come from a 112-year-old family business called TVS, which is a great business, but chose 10 years ago to say, let's be a full-time GP. So I think there's a vibrant supply of GPs happening. In our business, GPs season in about 2-3 cycles, so at least 10 years minimum. So now there are lots of people 10 plus years of experience, which means they will make better returns. The second thing that's happening in this industry as for the pools grow is the Indian LP market, which is our biggest problem today, is growing. So today our ultra high net worth individuals have about 200 trillion rupees of assessed wealth. But maybe that constitutes of a large range. So maybe there's about 50-60 trillion of very large ticket wealth. So we have to get money from them. The insurance companies are slowly beginning to come into the picture, especially private sector. But the largest pool in the world, Hansi, 40% of all money for VCPE comes from one single source, and that's called pension. In India, that is 0. So we are only working with 60%, right? Not even 60, because 20 comes from charities, what they call foundations and endowments. So that's gone. So we're actually like 40% of the sliver cannot produce 100% of the result. So we need to work with these pools to the government to get the pension. Today the new modern pension scheme called NPS has come to something like 3.5 trillion rupees. And that is going to grow at about 40% because people are migrating to that area. India is very under-pensioned. In the world, typically pension pool of say Canada is 1.5 times their GDP. Pension pool of India is 10% of the GDP. So huge headroom there. So we need to make, the second issue is make capital available.
Sure. Okay, so there's a lot of points that you raised. Can I just pick on a few? Right? Okay, so the first thing, you started, the industry started in '93, interestingly just after I left India. But 2007, 6-7 vintage, there's a lot of money that came in. India sort of, attracted a lot of capital, and that didn't give great results. So there's a whole lot of hesitation about India. What would you say happened there, and more importantly, what have the managers learned from that?
I would say a couple of things happened there. One is basically whenever money flows too fast, it always ends up with a crisis. This is the history of the world. So too much excitement about India, the 2006-7, and then 2008 came as a stark reminder of what the world can look like when it's ugly. That's one part of it. The second part of it is we didn't have a good supply of seasoned managers. To me, this industry is about GPs. Today in 2019, if you look at the GPs around the room who are making good results, they're all in their 40s, early 40s. Maybe I'm an exception, a few of us, but all in their 40s. These people in 2006 were 28-year-old associates. Seasoned GP is the basic requirement, and for seasoned GPs to work in India, you need to feed them with capital. Opportunities are there in the market, a 2.5 trillion economy going to 5 trillion in 8-9 years. So the issue is not opportunity, it's just the people to put it to work. It's like going to a country which is middle class and saying there's a huge healthcare opportunity, but there are no doctors. But doctors also need hospitals and medicines, which is money. So I see that we are at that cusp of that is happening. So many new funds. Let's just count a few. The people, I think from Fairfax, the manager left. Couple of managers have left Bain Capital. Couple of managers just left Sequoia and raised $300 million. Couple of firms like Helion went into multiple teams, right? People went from General Atlantic and
this is recent. All of these are recent.
Last 3-4 years to start Kedara, right? And then of course before that Renuka went from ICICI to start multiples, right? And now the NEA team, she's raising her own fund.
Right. So just on that 2007 issue, it was an issue of the managers not being mature enough, and maybe the investors also being maybe greedy. Do you think, in terms of
investors by definition are always greedy? In the, if you call that as greed, I would call them as motivated.
Right.
But that is a constant.
In terms of valuation, overpaying and all that. No,
but that is a constant. But the point was, India suddenly looked good. A lot of people were doing essentially, in my mind, parachute investing. Just just flying in, making investments and going away. But now the managers are on the ground. KKR in 2006-07 India, nothing. KKR in 2019 under Sanjay Nair was such a fantastic job. Great team producing spectacular returns. So you can go firm by firm and say, where were they in 2006-07? Where are they in 2019? It's a completely different GP landscape.
Okay, so let's talk about the LPs now, the domestic market you think we should get capital from. There's a huge amounts of money in HNI, so the family offices and HNIs are investing via the wealth management industry. Have you tapped that market, do you think, adequately, or is that much more room to grow there as well?
No, I think that's been scraped fully, because there is a clear alignment of wealth managers to want to raise money and get distribution fees, which is one of the challenges in the industry today, where the distribution fees are nearly twice what it is abroad. So if you look at it today, what is the amount of money pooling in? It's AIF 1 and 2 is about 30,000-40,000. If I add AIF 3, which is the long only in hedge funds, it's about 50,000-60,000 a year, right? So we're getting close to what, 7-8 billion, right? Oh, is it correct? Yeah, I suppose that's correct, isn't it? 7-8 billion. It's about 7,000 crore is a billion, right? So we get close to 7-8 billion a year is coming into this industry. A lot of it is coming from HNIs. So every large family office today has a very clear alternate asset strategy, investing in multiple funds, right? So that part is done. I think for us, we have to get in. World order is very simple. 40% pension, roughly. 30% charity, 20% banks and insurance, 40, 30, 20, 90. 10 is sovereign wealth fund. India, we've got very good sovereign wealth fund activity between NIF and the SIDBI fund of funds, which is a 10,000 crore pool.
So 2 billion. Yeah. Less than 2 billion.
But this is going to VC funds, and they're giving them checks of 10 million. They've already done 35 funds. So we have 35 new managers who 6-7 years from now will be seasoned managers. So I think it's amazing. The first problem is getting sorted beautifully, which is the GP landscape. But we need to therefore open insurance. We need to open pension.
Okay, so insurance is another one. LIC is a big.
Used to be.
Okay, they're bailing banks out.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so is insurance not a segment that you're going after?
So insurance has got a very large pool of, if you look at the total amount of money they have, it's huge. It's about 35 lakh crores, 35 trillion rupees, out of which about life itself will be 30, combination of term and of course endowment, but endowment maybe 20-ish. So there's a lot of money there. They can easily put 1 lakh crores to work. So we have to tap into insurance, which we have to motivate the largest insurer, LIC, and the public sector insurers who control most of the money. So in fact, today we just had a meeting with the additional secretary in the DFS, the Department of Financial Services, very enlightening guy. So he's asked us to propose a 2-3 page policy paper on what an investment policy in alternate assets should look like for a public sector insurer. I think those are the kind of activities. Today the National Pension Chairman said, look, I really want you guys to go and work on getting public sector pension, which is the 85% of the pension pool, open to AIF. It's only the private sector. The mechanics of getting it, I will sort it out.
Okay, so I was going to come to that. So by the way, I was the consultant to the NPS. I advised Dhirendra Swarup when he was chairman at PFRDA. And the thinking was that because it's new and it's retail investors, let's start with the biggest benchmark, so the Nifty, Sensex and Nifty. Let's go with passive. Let's go with listed equity, which they recognize. And then over time, we will go into smaller asset classes and active managers. And they've done active, passive, flip-flop a couple of times. So I can see them kind of, 2% now? He said 2% allocation to alternatives?
But there are, on paper, then that is a policy issue. Then there's what I call a tactical issue. Their requirement is to invest only in listed products with daily NAV and a double B rating, which means practically zero. So now that layer we can sort out, that 2% can start flowing. Then there's a next level of issues that people have to commit for 7 years or 6 years. So you have to make sure that commitment can be locked in. Next level issue is, today you allow inter-manager transfer. You can just online transfer from SBI Asset Management to LIC Asset Management. So that amounts have to be locked into one manager. So once you work through these 2-3 issues, the mechanics work. Then we have to get the government pool allocated. So the government pool is 85%, is about 2.5 lakh crore. So the government pool 2% will be significant. We have 5,000 crores.
So who influences that? Because the EPFO has its own set of trustees. Who do you have to go to actually get that government pool?
The NPS.
So the same. So
there's different organizations. So EPFO comes under Labour Ministry. NPS, comes under the PFRDA, which is a statutory created regulator.
But for the government employees allocation, the 85%.
DEA. It has to originate from Department of Economic Affairs, which is why Saurabh Gab, when he came today, was talking about that.
Right. Okay. So are you hopeful that money will make?
I think so. I think we should get the mechanics sorted. We should start at the bottom. If you ask my intuitive sense of it, is to make sure the private can actually get allocated. So there's not theory. And then we should go to the government and say, look, private is working, but you have 85% of the money. Private pensioners are making higher yields. Then we have to address the more existential issue of PFRDA. PFRDA is designed where every individual can choose their pension plan. Globally, and today we had a very good talk from Anita George, the Canadian pension, they have essentially aggregated pension plans at a corporate level. So the corporate pension plan manager says, we will do 5% in AIFs. Right? In India, right, Hansi has to say I will do, Gopal has to say he will do. So it's much more complex.
Hansi doesn't have a clue what to do. So a retail investor doesn't know what to do.
So that is a core issue, and so you assume among the whatever 3 crore or 2.7 crore investors in the public sector, in the total pension scheme, let's assume that out of 27 lakhs, 50,000 of them are relevant. How do you get that message across to 50,000? How do you tell them, hey guys, listen, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, you need to have some allocation of 2% to a VCPE and let your pension manager find a good one and do it.
So how do you intend to do that? How do you intend to convince the PFRDA to allow you to go and do just like Mutual Fund Sahi Hai did a campaign, you have to do alternatives Acha hai or Sahi hai for your pension plan. How do you intend to do that?
That is what we now have to put our thinking caps on. I mean, this is an excellent panel we had today. We're really able to sort of forge a solution. Let's work on it. We'll, we can learn from our brothers and sisters in the amphi.
Okay, so now, domestic pension aside, there's obviously a huge pension sort of industry the world over. We've got money from Canada, we've got money from Middle East, from some parts of Asia. We haven't got that much money from Australia is a large, like the Canadian market. Even the US has not come.
Individual pensions have come.
Individuals have come. So,
like for example, Florida has come. I think some of the other New York pensions have come.
So,
I don't know about CalPERS.
CalPERS, I was going to say, so are there...
CalPERS is getting exposure through a KKR or a Blackstone, I think.
Okay, because of that. I was going to say, so I know Australia, for example, doesn't do single country funds. They are stuck on, we make an allocation to private equity or to VC and let the manager, the global fund, decide how much to invest in India. Again, I'm asking, do you think that's tapped out, or there's much more that we can do, we meaning IVCA or the industry can do to tap global pension money?
I'm not fully aware of this area, but Canadian pension is here actively, and so is what we saw today, Quebec CDPQ. So, you know, I mean, honestly, Canada alone has $2 trillion. So $2 trillion is 140 trillion rupees, right? So we're dealing with a number that is mind-boggling there itself. So I think our problem there is more for individual managers to do it, because people are allocating now. And more and more people have come on the ground. So CDPQ has a direct investment on the ground. CPPAB has a direct investment on the ground. I suspect you'll see more and more on the ground investment, direct investments by these funds, which means automatically once they're investing on the ground, they'll be more open to investing in local managers. Because they're more, why would they invest through a large global fund across countries when they can buy diversification by country? Right? Diversification is something you want to buy for the best managers. You know, the old conglomerate theory, if you remember the 1970s, was, look, I have my shareholders, I can do aerospace, textiles, consumer goods, and cars or whatever. But then it was very clear that if the shareholder wanted to buy the best car company, he or she would buy the best car company, the best textile company, the best aerospace company. And today, I mean, I think Pratt & Whitney, if you see what's happening today, is actually divesting their original business. Otis Elevators, right? Carrier air conditioning. So I think same way, when you say people want to buy diversification across countries through one platform, people can also buy diversification through each country's platform. Now, while I cannot speak for a smaller nation, when a country like India is going to be a 10 trillion economy in 20 years' time or 15 years' time, whatever time it is, I think every pension manager has a huge incentive to put teams on the ground and harvest that extra yield for their pensioners. And therefore, Indian funds will get money directly at an India allocation level. I think in 5 years' time, when people show the allocation list, there will be a line item called India.
Okay, so let's.
And I'm just to know, you know that anyway, just to state, I'm an India optimist. In
I
every
was going to
sense
say,
of the
so
term.
so let's hear your India pitch. So for the managers that we will show this video to, for the pension funds all over the world, what is your India pitch? Why should they come to India?
My India pitch is 2 words: why not? Because in my mind, if you're going to miss the largest growing market in the world, which is a full democracy, where rule of law is far more active than relative to any other country, and the system of operation is understandable across the world in a language called English, why would you want to miss it?
Their 2 words would be too hard.
Not at all. Just come and see what others have done and see how much money they've made.
Yeah, I think the Canadian is a very good example.
And even at the GP level, see how KKR has done, see how GA has done, see what Warburg has done, right? See what Fairfax is doing. So just turn on the light.
They're missing out. Okay.
If FOMO can motivate people to throw money from the VC funds into companies in this venture space, there can be FOMO for India also.
Yeah. So I guess there is some thinking and some papers that float around saying high GDP does not necessarily lead to high returns, which I think puts, and China is used as an example of that. Japan is used as an example of that. So I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Obviously, I'm in India, so I'm an India optimist. But that's where I think these examples that you're mentioning right now might be a better.
And see, you went to school, you went to college like I did, I'm sure, right?
Actually, I didn't know.
Okay.
But anyway.
I'm sure I don't have. I have to wonder whether that statement was made in seriousness. I didn't go to school, but
I went to school. I got my BA by correspondence. I didn't have enough money to go to college.
That's okay. I mean,
and I did get my CFA, and I did get my Wharton certificate after that. So yeah.
So I'm just saying, if you go to any school, college, whichever, what do you see? There is a bell curve. There are bright people. On that scale, I'm not saying brightness is good, but they're there. And there are less bright people on that scale. There's a median, there are quartiles, there are deciles, there's a mean. Now, when you come to any country, if it's America or India, there are some managers who will do better than others. Now, if you invested in a manager which you didn't do your evaluation well, don't blame it on India. Blame it on yourself. Blame it on luck. Blame it on lessons learnt. And do it again. So, in my mind, you have to look at the managers carefully. I mean, McKinsey has produced some stunning data in October, November, December at portfolio level of people making means of 21% and 22% in the post-2013 funds, right? So, I think there is overall mean shifting has taken place with better managers in a country which is more organized. Today, all the founders and promoters are looking for private equity or venture capital for growth, it's a very different country.
Just one more sort of thought. What if they investing in companies, whether it's Apple or Uber or Facebook with WhatsApp having that much exposure to India, and their theory is that they're getting exposure indirectly through these global companies?
Which I think they should, no? Because after all, when you have a public equity portfolio, you want to look at country exposure. For example, in Nifty, most of the Nifty actually is US exposure and Europe exposure because of 2-3 IT companies, right? So I think they should do that analysis also. But there is something called India allocation. So you run your math and you say, look, if 40%, I mean, just imagine, say 40% of the equities of the world are owned by insurance companies. They will run their math and say, okay, here are my large cap companies, this is their India exposure, and then run the numbers. But India has space for everybody. We have space for 1.3 billion people, we have space for them.
As I said, I was just playing devil's advocate, but I really admire your passion, so thank you very much. Any pitch on why they should consider TVS Capital?
TVS Capital hasn't raised foreign money as yet. So we're considering doing it. We just raised 1,200 crores of Indian money. It's our third fund. Our first funds were about half of this size. So totally we raised about 2,500 crores of money. But there is a lot of pressure from my board who believes, and my new partners who believe they should raise foreign money, or rather have a wide set of investors. I'm not so fond of foreign investors because I think they're very fickle, because they have to choose across countries and across managers. So every time you go around, it doesn't mean you're going to get a re-up. Indian investors are pretty much, if you do well, they'll just give you money, right? In the foreign investors, the pensions and the sovereign funds and the developmental financial institutions, they are very reliable partners. But not sure the rest of them are looking at opportunities at every point in time, as they should be doing.
Sure. But as you said, domestically you're well known anyway, so TVS Capital, or TVS is well known name, so I'm sure you're getting domestic
we have a lot
visibility.
of family offices, a lot of insurance companies in our fold. In fact, insurance is a big pitch for us.
Is there a particular segment that you look after, that you focus on?
So basically, we are a classical growth fund. We have 3 stage strategies. Venture growth, which is venture companies going towards EBIT at some point in time, but still high levels of growth. Typically maybe Series B, Series C. For example, if you're familiar with Nykaa, which is a very, very popular company in terms of online cosmetics. We were Series B with them. Right now we're doing a Series C with another similar company, but in a more business service. I think B2B venture growth is coming in a big way in India. I see that as a very big trend. Second is we do classic growth, which is minority supporting somebody with say $5-6 million EBIT, wanting to grow more. It's a stage we don't really like because there's too much of promoter drift issues over time. And then there's late stage where typically companies are already at $15-20 million of PAT. And they want to grow, and typically these tend to be club deals. So there we're very active in that space. We've done, for example, India Energy Exchange, where we invested close to $80 million along with 2 investors to take the company public. So we participate there. Right now we are really focused on venture growth because the last 7-8 years have created a phenomenal supply of founders, promoters, entrepreneurs. So that's where we are. Financial services is our dominant theme, and then we look. Then we also invest about 30% of our fund in consumer. So for us, those are the 2 themes.
And is there a particular source of value add that you specialize in, whether it's identifying or helping them scale or exit?
So typically for us at venture growth, we are very actively involved in, engaged in growing the business. Our big strength is our ecosystem. We've actually over 10 years built a very powerful ecosystem, people from HR, finance, technology, venture advisors. You know, in India, just think about it, Hansi. All our investors are family offices. Every family office is in business.
Right.
So imagine if I want to do a ref check, which just now did, 5 family offices said, hey, I know I can help you in this. Another family office, oh, there's a wooden product. We are in wood. We have a great wood technologist who can advise you. Right. So for us, ecosystem is our strength. And I've been an operator all my life. At 50, I turned a private equity guy. For 25 years, I built 9 businesses before that. So we tend to be very hands-on in terms of building venture growth. Venture growth is our sweet spot. Classic growth, if we get alignment, which is to be seen. And late stage, of course, tends to be more classical private equity investing, much more financial, much more governance, much more strategy. But venture growth tends to be hands-on. You know, let's make HR better. Let's figure out what our talent pipeline should look like, right?
Yeah, that's what you're most passionate about, right?
Yeah, but that's what I've done all my life. So yeah.
Okay, anything else that you want to say?
No, come to India.
अपना time आएगा. As somebody said, अपना time आ गया.
आ गया. Time तो आ गया.